There we go. Penn, Jon Krakauer, and the innovative film Jay Cassidy. Because so many of you stayed and because we're tight on time, I'm not going to talk much myself except to say that we're going to be on a panel at 2 o'clock in Elks Park with Werner Herzog if you want more after this. But I do want to start by asking Jon, actually, because this story originated as a magazine article, and then you were compelled to further research it because of some echoes that it had from your own personal life, and if you can just talk a little bit about that and bring us into your process of writing the book.
I have to say this first. I came in for the last hour again, and I've seen this before, but I mean, it's hard to talk. So you can't remember your question, but I can't either. I wrote this, a magazine assigned me to write this. I had less than 3 weeks, and once I started learning about the story, I was totally amazed the more I learned. So I churned out this 9,000-word magazine article, which is a long article, but I felt like I barely scratched the surface. So I used that as a book proposal and got my first real book contract. And spent the next 3 years just obsessively tracing Chris's path. And the magazine article helped me because a number of people, including Ron Franz, I would have never found him except that he'd seen the magazine article, wrote to the magazine, and asked them to forward a letter to me. So I was able to meet him and interview him. So it was a very powerful experience researching this book. And everyone said the guy was suicidal or schizophrenic or just an idiot. And when I was his age, when I was 23, he went to Alaska when he was 24. When I was 23, I'd gone to Alaska by myself and nearly died, and realized that if I had died then, people would have said the same things about me, that I was suicidal probably. And so I had this very strong sense that I knew he was a complicated guy, but I didn't think he had a death wish. I was sure he didn't. And I felt like my experience informed the book, and I wasn't an impartial author. I mean, I definitely had a point of view, but I think everyone does at some point. So anyway, that's where I came from.
And Sean, can you talk about how you first discovered the material and how you connected with it?
Yeah, there used to be this little open-air bookstore in the Brentwood area of Los Angeles by a chicken stand I used to go to get lunch at sometimes, and I'd go and browse the books there a lot. It was kind of a two-walled store, open air, and I saw the cover of the book, and so I grabbed it, and it's just something about the cover and the title got me, and it turned out I judged a book by its cover in a way that worked for me. So I took it home, and I ended up reading it cover to cover twice, which took me the wee hours of the following morning. I went to sleep. And I got up and I started pursuing film rights on it, so I see if they were available. It just immediately, very much like the movie you just saw, was what kind of struck me. That is the book to me. From when I read it, it just had that kind of impression on me. And so then I got in touch with Jon, and I met with. He introduced me to the family, and we had a series of conversations that seemed to get pretty close to a decision to allow me to make the film. And then it was still very fresh devastation. It hadn't been that many years at that point since they'd lost their son. And so at the kind of last minute, the mother felt that she couldn't see Mother May. For a variety of reasons, not the least of which was a dream that she had, where, in essence, Chris was telling her not to. And so I told her that if I didn't respect dreams, I wouldn't make movies, and I'd leave it there with her. But I always felt that there was something about this story that was just too hungry to be a movie for it not to happen. That ultimately I felt they would allow it to happen. Whether or not I was going to be involved, again, would be up to them. But I did leave them with the kind of promise that I would never lose interest. That it would always be the movie I wanted to do more than any other. And so that no matter how much time might pass, please know that. And then about 10 years later, I got a call that they were reconsidering. And by then, I guess I'd subconsciously really written the script in my head as I had gone through those 10 years and things I'd seen, thought about, things, echoes of the book, and then it happened.
And can you tell me about the process of writing the script, and did you, were you interested to meet a lot of these actual people, or was it more using the way that Jon described them in the book to have a sense of how they are? Because some of the people, like the girl at the Slab City, the singer, she's described just, in a journalistic way, really, in the book, and now we see her on screen as this full body personality.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was the book that left the most, visual imprint in me of anything I had ever read, and so. When I started the draft 10 years later, I didn't go back and reread it. I had read it those 2 times the first day that I bought it, not again for 10 years, and I wrote the first draft out of what my kind of emotional memory of it was. And then it turned out that it was very close to what I read when I then reread the book. I had to do, there were a few things I had to put back in line and change and to bring it into the true story of what happened more while doing certain compressions. And then after that, I did another draft when I went on the road myself, and both in search of the people and the places. and then that informed it in another way and fleshed things out, and then we got to work.
And because we have Jay here, who I know has worked with you on several pictures, probably we could just talk a little bit about the visual language of the film, because every place that we go in the movie, there's such an extraordinarily rich detail and little things that we see, little shots that are cut in that give us such a rich sense of the place, like Slab City or that wonderful sort of place where he has the flash flood. Can you talk about the shooting and then cutting, creating the structure of these scenes?
When we were sort of in prep, Sean said, got to make this movie somewhere, so we might as well go where Chris went. And so for the most part, the locations were in very close to where Chris went. And in fact, where the flash flood was, it was down to check on your little GPS to the foot of where the car had. And we would stand out on the set with photographs. Chris McCandless had taken photographs with the family. Gave us copies of it. You could stand there. There's the yellow car that's our prop car. You hold the book that's got the photograph. You look at the mountain range, and there's the photograph with the same mountain range and the same yellow car. And so we given that you had to go, you went where Chris went. That added a level of integrity. And I think what was so interesting, and this certainly was Eric's contribution, is that all of the places, they look different. If you're in Arizona, in one part of Arizona, it looks completely different than another part of Arizona. And I think that integrity we followed through, and certainly Alaska was 4 trips and mostly motivated by the weather.
I think we should take some questions out here. I'm sure there's a bunch. You sir, there.
Do you think that Chris really did come to the conclusion that happiness is only real when shared? Did he write that, or?
The question is about the line, happiness is only real when shared.
I think very much. The last book he read was Dr. Zhivago, and that line isn't from Dr. Zhivago, but when his body was recovered, and when I went back to the bus, some of his books were still there, and that copy of Dr. Zhivago in the margin, when Pasternak is talking about happiness and about Lara, and is happiness only real when shared, And Emil did an amazing job of copying Chris's that block handwriting in capitals. That's what Chris's handwriting looks like. So that's a very real, that's absolutely true. And that was one of his last entries in the journal. So that's no bullshit.
Yes, there.
Did you have to cut the father a break in the film? In other words, I thought
Where's... Oh.
here, I thought the character was brilliantly acted by Emil Hirsch, and I was completely engaged in it. I thought, in terms of preserving the dad because he's still alive, whether you cut him a break. In other words, this child was really, the word isn't well, yes, I'm a mother, so damaged by his upbringing, and it produced some extraordinary results. But there was mystery about the dad, where I didn't fully see the impact of the father, particularly, upon the kid, and whether there were any considerations because this man is alive.
Let me say that I didn't cut him a break, and the impact for me is there. You know, and I think that there's not a parent alive that doesn't damage their kid. From the time that you tell them they can't shit on the floor, you're damaging them. You know, I think that in this case, one of the things that made Chris McCandless so special was one of the things that made him more vulnerable to being hurt by things not only in the family but in the society at large. I think that, you know, there's you know, mad worlds are tougher on sane people, and so that also was part of his great strength when he separated himself from it and some of the things that he achieved. And it is no small thing to make it 113 days on your own Alaska.